This is the deepest lake on Earth, a freshwater lake deeper than most seas. And when you stand at its edge, especially in winter, Lake Baikal doesn't feel like a lake at all. It feels like a lid placed over something that doesn't want to be seen. Fog drifts across dark water. The ice groans and fractures like glass under tension, and beneath that surface is a vertical drop so vast it messes with your sense of scale. A lake that behaves like an abyss. Most places, if you go deep enough, the world becomes simple, colder, darker, quieter. Baikal becomes unfamiliar. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Even with modern technology, most of this lake has never been directly observed in a continuous human way. We have maps, yes. We have sonar, sampling, instruments. But knowing a place like Baikal, really knowing it, requires time in the dark, and that is exactly what Baikal resists. So hold on to this question from the start. If you had the chance to descend into the deepest fresh water on Earth, would you do it? Tell me in the comments, because what people report down there gets weird fast. Lake Baikal is ancient, unreasonably old for a lake, old enough that it didn't just collect water, it collected history. And because it has been isolated for so long, it's like a living laboratory, a contained world where life adapted in its own direction. But it's not just the biology, it's the geology. Baikal sits in a massive rift, an area where the Earth's crust is being pulled apart. This is not a quiet basin, it's a wound that never fully closes, the kind of place that feels stable on the surface and restless underneath. And then there's the number that makes people stop mid-sentence. Baikal holds an enormous share of the planet's unfrozen fresh water. One place holding that much of Earth's drinkable surface water should feel like a global treasure. Instead, it often feels like a boundary, because whenever humans encounter a place like this, we do what we always do. We test it, we enter it, we try to make it explain itself. Divers go down, researchers go down, expedition teams go down, sometimes under open water, sometimes through holes cut into thick winter ice. And if you listen to enough accounts, you start noticing a pattern in how people describe their experiences. They don't start with monsters, they start with sensations, disorientation, a sudden irrational certainty that they're not alone, and a feeling, quietly repeated, that something is watching, not like a creature staring from behind a rock, more like the environment itself has attention, like the lake has presence. Now, before we go any further, we have to be careful here. People tell stories for a lot of reasons. Stress, fear, adrenaline, cold, oxygen issues, equipment noise, distorted perception.
But here's the detail that makes the reports harder to brush off. The people describing this aren't usually thrill seekers guessing in the dark. Many are trained. Many have hundreds of dives. Many have spent years in hostile environments. And yet, the language they use around Baikal sounds less like adventure and more like a warning. So let me ask you, right now, where do you land on this? When trained people report the same presence in the same place, do you think it's psychology or geography? Tell me in the comments. Now, let's talk about what Baikal does to the human body. Depth isn't just going down. Depth is pressure, an invisible force that stacks itself on you. Every meter changes how your gear behaves, how your breathing gas behaves, how your thinking behaves. At certain depths, the human brain stops operating the way you trust it to. And this is where the lake becomes a character in the story, not just a location. Because there's a strange thing about deep water. It can convince you that you're fine when you're not. It can turn simple decisions into fatal mistakes. It can distort time. It can blur memory. It can make you feel calm and confident in the exact moment you should be cautious. This is why when a dive goes wrong, the story often doesn't sound dramatic at first. Sometimes it's a small choice, a misread gauge, a delayed ascent, a moment of hesitation, a wrong turn in limited visibility. And in Baikal, limited visibility isn't just darkness, it's scale. This lake is so deep that down stops feeling like a direction and starts feeling like a destination you can't return from. That brings us to the part people come for, the disappearances. Because Lake Baikal has a reputation, and the reputation is simple. It doesn't always give people back. In most places, we carry an assumption about water, that it returns what it takes, that something lost at depth will eventually resurface, if not today, then someday. In Baikal, someday becomes uncertain. There are stories of dives cut short for reasons no one can clearly articulate afterward. Stories of sudden equipment issues, lights failing, instruments behaving strangely, communication breaking down at the worst moment. Stories of search efforts that end not because the location is unknown, but because recovery becomes impossible. And that's where the lake earns its unease. Because think about the psychological difference between these two scenarios. One, someone is lost, but you know where they are.
2. Someone is lost and the lake makes that knowledge useless. That second one changes how people talk about a place. It changes how locals tell the story. It changes how divers think before they step into the water. Now, let's shift, because at around this point, almost every Baikal story turns to the lights.
People who spend time on the lake, especially in winter, sometimes talk about lights under the ice. They're not constant. They don't behave like a fixed beacon. They appear, then vanish. Some descriptions are vague, just a glow at depth, a pulse of brightness moving under the ice. Others are more specific, a concentrated light, like a distant headlamp where no person should be. And here's what matters. You can explain a lot of these reports without invoking anything paranormal. Ice can refract light in strange ways. A distant vehicle's lights can travel beneath the ice sheet and emerge somewhere unexpected. Fishing lights can create the illusion of movement. Even your own position, your own angle, can make a stationary glow appear to shift. But Baikal has another ingredient that makes this harder to dismiss completely: activity from below. This lake is unusual enough that methane-related phenomena are documented there. Methane trapped, methane released, methane moving in ways that are still being studied. When gas and water interact under pressure, strange visual effects can happen. Bubbles, shimmering distortions, sudden curtains of movement in the dark. And even if the lights are fully explainable, here's the part people don't like admitting. A rational explanation doesn't make it feel less disturbing when you're alone on the ice at night and the lake beneath your feet suddenly glows. So here's your third question. Tell me in the comments, if you saw lights under the ice, would you assume it's a natural phenomenon, or would your brain instantly go to something else? Now we need to address the natural explanation segment, because it builds trust and it matters. Yes, biology and chemistry can produce surprising visuals in water. Yes, gas releases can distort water columns and visibility. Yes, ice is a lens, a giant moving lens that bends, reflects, and spreads light in ways that can trick your eyes. Yes, deep diving affects cognition, perception, and memory. And yet, some sightings don't line up neatly with the simple versions of these explanations, at least not in the way they're told by witnesses. That's why Baikal stays in this strange middle zone, too scientifically significant to dismiss, too personally unsettling for many people to reduce to simple facts. Now let's talk about the lake as a threat, not as a mystery, because the scariest thing about Baikal isn't what you might imagine is down there. It's what the environment can do to you. Cold changes everything. It tightens muscles, accelerates fatigue, affects breathing, slows reaction time. Under ice, the surface, your emergency exit, is no longer up, it's back to the hole, which can be a tiny circle of light in an endless ceiling. In open water, you can panic and still surface. Under ice, panic becomes geometry, panic becomes navigation, panic becomes a countdown. And that's where a lot of Baikal fear comes from. The lake forces you to be perfect.
Now, we reach the most disturbing recurring detail in these stories. It's not what people claim they saw, it's what they can't remember. Survivors sometimes describe gaps, missing minutes, missing sequences, a sense that the story has been edited, like their memory recorded everything except the most important part. Some describe a time slip feeling, like they looked at a gauge, looked away, and looked back, and far more time had passed than should have. Some describe climbing out onto the ice or shore, and only later realizing they can't reconstruct the dive. And again, let's be responsible. Stress, cold, narcosis, oxygen issues, these can all contribute to confusion and memory distortion. But when the same kind of missingness appears in story after story, it creates a different kind of fear. Not fear of the unknown, fear of the unreliable. Because if your own mind can't be trusted at depth, then what exactly is the true story of what happened down there? So here's a question that cuts right to the core. Do you think Baikal's mystery is actually the lake, or is it the human brain under pressure? Tell me in the comments. Now, why is there no final answer? Because exploration has limits, real limits. The deeper you go, the more expensive it becomes, the more dangerous, the more your window of time shrinks, the more you're relying on machines, cables, instruments, and imperfect data. And Baikal is remote. Its weather turns quickly. Its ice can be stable one day and fractured the next. The lake is huge, and much of it is far from easy rescue. So even today, the lake remains partly unvisited, partly unverified, partly imagined. That doesn't mean anything supernatural is happening. It means the environment is strong enough to keep secrets without trying. Baikal doesn't need to hide answers.
It doesn't need myths. It doesn't need conspiracies. It has depth. It has cold. It has time. And it has enough darkness to let humans do what humans always do in the dark: fill in the blanks. And maybe that's the real reason Lake Baikal refuses to explain itself. Because the lake doesn't speak in words. It speaks in pressure, in distance, in silence, in missing memory. You can stand on the ice and feel it. This place is not designed for comfort. It's designed for survival. And that's why, even when we learn more, every new expedition, every new scan, every new instrument lowered into the abyss, Baikal never feels solved. It feels temporarily understood until the next story surfaces, until the next team turns back early, until the next light appears beneath the ice and disappears before anyone can explain it. Lake Baikal does not behave like other bodies of water, and it does not explain itself. It doesn't need to. Some places don't hide answers. They simply make us leave.